Okay, I'm going to read a statement from Winston and just then say a few words about him. I'm really sorry I can't be here tonight. I would have liked to have been, but the partner I was relying on to cover the music promotional event we had scheduled for tonight had a family emergency and had to pull out, and I had to go instead. I've got a message I want to convey to Carole, to Janet, and all those fighting for justice. Don't give up. That's what the police and the state want you to do. They spread lies, they cover up the truth, and they want us to give up and go away. But what my case showed is that the truth will come out in the end if people stay strong, keep digging, keep protesting. Justice will come. Solidarity to you all. For those of you who don't know, Winston Silcott was sent down in 1987 with Mark Braithwaite and Engin Ragkip. He was one of the Tottenham Three, sent down for the killing of P.C. Blakelock at the Broadwater Farm uprising in 1985. In 1991, the conviction for all three of them was quashed when it emerged that the police had fabricated all the evidence. Even though the convictions were quashed, Winston was kept inside for 18 years. I'm in Tottenham SWP branch. I used to drive the family to prison. Once a month, they got a visit. Winston was moved all over the country. The family didn't have a car. His parents had come over from Montserrat to make a life for their family in Tottenham, and they found their boy wrongly sent to jail for 18 years. I used to drive them to prison, and one time they insisted that I go in and take their visiting slot. So I met Winston for the first time, I think it was in the late 90s, in prison, and he had quite an impression on me because Winston had a long, long beard, because when he was convicted, he said, "I'm not going to cut my beard until justice is done." And so it grew so long that he ended up wrapping it up in a ball and having a little pouch under his chin because it was a thin beard to keep his beard there. And the thing about Winston was prison didn't break him. He made friends with all the politicos in prison. He made friends with the Irish prisoners. He made friends with all those who'd been suffering miscarriage of justice. He was a real class fighter. When he was released in 2003, he kept a low profile. He's a shy man. He doesn't like the limelight. But he came out earlier this year when Nicky Jacobs was charged with P.C. Blakelock's murder on the same contaminated evidence that they'd used to stitch up Winston all those years ago. Winston came out, spoke for Nicky Jacobs, protested, and in the end, Nicky Jacobs, the case was thrown out of court. Winston... As I say, he's a class fighter. It's a real shame he can't be with us today, but I know he's with us in spirit. And I know that he's with Carole and the Duggan family, he's with Janet and the Alder family, and he's with all of us here fighting for justice. Thank you.
Okay, so our first speaker tonight is a fierce fighter for justice. It's Carole Duggan, Mark Duggan's auntie.
To thank you all for that, and it's times like this really when I wish that Mark's mother, my sister Pamela, was here. She's just sat at home listening to the television and reading those stupid newspapers and believing it because she doesn't have the outlet. She's suffering a second bout of cancer, which obviously has been brought about by the result of Mark's death. It really overwhelms me when I find the support that we have, because really, in all honesty, when injustice hits you in the face, what do? You have to get up. You have to fight. Just like Winston said, They're out to shut us down, close us down, shut us up, make us go away. Working class people, we don't have the money, the resources to fight. So somebody has to give up their life to fight, as Janet Alder's been doing for the last 16 years. Marcy Rigg. You know, we can go on. The list is endless of people that are having to stand up and fight for their family. And it's not just for their family, it's for everybody. We're of an age now. What about our children, your children? V53, Mark's executioner, has been proved he did nothing wrong. No criminal action, all in the line of duty. He's got his gun back, and he's back on the streets of London. How does that make you all feel? Does that make you feel safe? Because it really does not make me feel safe for Mark's children. Because if you go back to 1985, where Winston Silcott was stitched up with the rest, and Nicky Jacobs of recent, Nicky Jacobs was the 7th person to be stitched up for PC Blakelock's murder. We believe that's one of the reasons why Mark's dead. Mark was born at Broadwater Farm. Mark's parents lived there for 26 years. We loved it. It was great until the police came in and decided to change it, just like they're doing now. The regeneration of Tottenham. The removal of unwanted people, namely foreigners. Skin that isn't white. That's what they're doing. And we believe one of the reasons why Mark was murdered is if you cannot move a strong community, what do? Go and kill them. Take a member of that community that is popular and well-liked and kill them and see what happens. Just like Cynthia Jarrett. She was a mother. Innocent. Did they bother about standing over her body when she was dying? No. They didn't care. Why? She was black. We can go on. Cherry Gross now. She's dead finally, and thank God that they're getting somewhere, because you know when she was alive, she got nothing. Persecution. So, you know, we can go on and on. The list is endless. There's been over 5,000 deaths in custody since 1969, and not one officer has been held accountable. Because majority of those deaths in custody are black deaths. You know, my family got slandered when they came to the court with the perverse verdicts of lawful killing and that Mark was not armed. The media were more concerned because Mark's brother shouted in the court, "A black death in this country is worth nothing." Those words that he said were true. But you know what they called us? Anarchists. Well, you know what? I'm proud to be an anarchist. I said from the beginning, and I still say now, I will not give up and it will not go away. Mark was executed. Mark is my blood. My blood, not theirs. They took my blood and expect me to walk away. But they're not walking away from PC Blakelock's death. They said they will fight until they get somebody. Well, you've just took somebody, the 7th person, on some trumped-up charge of, what did they say? He wrote some lyrics while he was in prison about chopping up the man and dig up the man's neck and chop. Yeah, right. Well, Bob Marley sang "I Shot the Sheriff." Did he shoot one? Then, we challenged the collusion of the police. The 11 armed police that surrounded Mark, you know, because Mark was so dangerous, and don't forget black people are superhuman. That's why the police have to come out in force, because you've got superhuman strengths, and also you can be magicians. Mark was a magician, because 1 minute he had a gun in his hand, he got shot twice, killed, and then the gun just disappeared. So that dead man got up and threw that gun. As a result of that, we challenged police collusion. And we went to the High Court, sat with 3 High Court judges, and they kind of agreed with us that it's not right for all of those 11 officers to go back to Leman Street Police Station and write their statements and not collude, and be verbally told don't collude, because they did collude. The cab that Mark was in was silver. They all stated it was gold. Is that not collusion? We took that to the court, and the result of that is the head of the firearms officer came out and said, basically, if the police are not allowed to confer, because they're so traumatised when they kill somebody that they need to lean on each other and need that support. So he basically said, if they are not allowed to confer, half of the firearms police are going to put down their guns. We say hallelujah. A lot of the police are serial killers. So take the guns off them and we remove that threat to the public. Do we not? Because I think we will. And we do, for our children. The next generation, do we really need all these armed police? I don't think so. This is an excuse. An excuse for them to play with their toys. And the result is we suffer. We suffer because our kids are being murdered by them. So anyway, that argument is still ongoing. We're waiting for a result to see whether the police are allowed to confer. And furthermore, I believe that the police have come out and tried to blackmail the public into allowing them to confer or collude, in my words. It doesn't stop there, though, does it? Just recently, Bernard Hogan Howe wants to employ a spin doctor to clean up his reputation, to control his media profile. All because of the results of the damning reports into their spying and corruption brought about by the Stephen Lawrence murder. So what they're doing, well, the elections are going to come up soon, aren't they? So you know what they want to do now? And this really kind of made me laugh in a sense. In his words, he wants to restore the Metropolitan Police relationship with large selections of the black community. Whenever the black community trusted the police, tell me please. Right. So why are they trying to restore something that was never there in the beginning? So it shows you how out of touch they are and how really institutionally racist they are, when they don't even acknowledge that they've been racist for all of these years. They've persecuted black people in this country for all of these years. Now they want to restore relationships with them. All brought about by the death of Mark Duggan. So it's really sad to think that my nephew lost his life in Tottenham. They want to restore. The only reason why they want to restore is because of the uprising that happened because of my nephew's death. It's too late. It's always been too late. Because, you see, the Metropolitan, well, all the police services in this country are institutionally racist, like a lot of the big organisations. What they do is they make themselves believe their own lies and then try and make the public believe it with them. Who's the smarter ones, really? Us. That's why we have to do what we have to do. This is why we have to come out and meet like this and talk like this, because this is the only real place that you get the truth. And it's all down to money, isn't it? Because the police pay the media pay the police. Everybody's paying everybody to say what they want them to say. This is where you get the truth. And this is why now I'm public enemy number one. Because I won't shut up and I won't go away and I will speak the truth. Basically, the perverse verdict, the jury believed Mark did not get out of that cab with a gun. We know Mark didn't have a gun, but that's another story that will come out in years to come. He did not get out of the cab with a gun, yet his Execution was deemed as legal, lawful killing. We have to overturn that verdict. We was at the Crown Court on Wednesday and Thursday to try and overturn that verdict, to quash it. Not just for Mark, not just for Mark's children, but for the majority of the population, i.e. working class, black, foreign people in this country, because you know it's them that are going to get shot dead. And you know what? The police get what they want. No questions asked. We are walking into a police state. In fact, the police state is here. We have to get up. We have to come together. Don't forget, there is more of us than there is of them. Why are they running the country and not us? Thank you. No justice, no peace.
Thank you, Carole. Our next speaker tonight is Janet Alder. Janet is the sister of Christopher Alder, who was unlawfully killed in 1998. And Janet has been campaigning for justice for 16 years ever since.
When the state murders, every single one of us in this room is susceptible. Christopher died because of the colour of his skin. But believe you me, if it was your family, they would do exactly the same. When I saw that appalling video of them dragging Christopher in after being CS gas beaten until he was unconscious, thrown on the floor with his trousers to his knees, and gasping for his life for 11 minutes, I honestly thought I had some belief in this system. I had a belief that they were going to do the right thing. We managed to have an inquest where we got an unlawful killing. 9 ordinary men and women stood there, they listened to the evidence, watched the video, and they came up to the same conclusion as what we did, that Christopher was unlawfully killed by the police. But then we came across the CPS. There's a law in this land that says that police officers are immune from prosecution. It shows the amount of people that have died and there's been absolutely no accountability. And it's only because people like us here in this room are the brave people. We are the people that will stand up for the truth. And it's only because there's people like us that we're managing to highlight these cases. The CPS are corrupt. Every single case that you've seen, there's either not enough evidence, or if the evidence is there, they will conflict it, allowing the police officers to walk free. We've got to be honest here. There's something in the law that says that police officers don't get prosecuted. In 2006, the IPCC did a review of Christopher's death because he had additional injuries. His clothes had been burnt, the van had been cleaned, police officers' clothing had been dry cleaned, he'd lost a tooth and his belt was missing. So I made sure that that video was shown on television. I wanted shock tactics because I could see what they were doing. So the IPCC did a review. At the beginning of their review, they said that people would be appalled if they saw how old-fashioned the police judicial system is, the disciplinary system. It dates back to the Indian Mutiny. Now that is where soldiers abused their power and they were not charged because they were frightened that they would come out in a mutiny. Now, is that the police disciplinary system? Is that the reason why families are fighting and fighting with absolutely no success? Because it's already set in stone? When we got those 5 police officers to court, I really thought that was going to be it. I always knew that Christopher had died because of the colour of his skin. The CPS denied the fact that they were making monkey noises, speaking about the Ku Klux Klan, and speaking about banana boats. That's the denial they've got in the racism in this country. Even when it's blatant in the faces, they will deny it. After the trial collapsed, I thought the only thing we can do is take this case to the European Court of Human Rights to at least get some recognition to the appalling state and the appalling way Christopher was treated. The government fought until the 11th hour, then admitted that they'd failed to do a thorough investigation, that Christopher's death was inhumane and degrading, and it was racism. But what are they going to do about it now they've admitted it? They think because they've apologised, that's the end of it. But there's still people dying. 2 or 3 people a week are dying at the hands of the police. And this is brutality. This is not people that have got mental illness, just falling dead. They've been living with mental illness for years. But all of a sudden, when they come into contact with the police, they're dead. And that is because this is police brutality. They are abusing their power. After 11 years, I really thought to myself, at least we've got some recognition. Let's hope that, more people won't die. But no, that's not the case. We've got the Burrell family. We've got the Demetrius family. We've got Smiley culture. Everybody is susceptible to this, believe me. Because I fought and because I wouldn't shut up and because I had the support of the public, the strong public, 26 police officers were involved in surveillance of me. 26 of them. Operation Yarrow. And they still haven't told me what they're supposed to have been doing. Where they were spying on me. Why they were spying on me. Because the police are allowed to stand and say no comment. The guy from the IPC said to me, Janet, he said, you're not going to get these people into court because they already know. They already know there's going to be no prosecutions against the police. But the thing was, in 2011, going back to 2000, I honestly believe that we gave Christopher a really good sending off, a really good funeral. We had brought in the army, who played the last post. All the family was there. Friends were invited, other campaigns were invited, and I really thought that we'd given him a really good send-off. But only to find that the bastards hid his body for 11 years and swapped it with a 77-year-old woman. They put stuff on the grave expecting me to go back and find out. I still don't know what that is yet. He was found in 6 body bags. The police was using him for training purposes. And that's how low these people will go. They are scum. But there's no way I'm going to shut up.
And don't you ever, and we'll be behind you. And as long as I've got breath, I'll be here all the way.
Thank you. They're that confident and that cocky with themselves that they will do anything to try and shut you up. But I've only been able to stand here because of the people that supported me. Yeah, the people that stood around, the people that have showed me strength, because the people that we've been fighting have only showed me fear. I used to think this was a big conspiracy of really strong people because I was brought up to think that the system, was about doing the right thing. Until I realised that these are the gutless people because they're only bothered about the status. the jobs, the finance, and that's what it boils down to, their fear. So it's people like us in this room. We are the strong people, and united we are even stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. So our final speaker tonight is Brian. He's a criminal barrister and a long-term member of the SWP, and also an editor of our Say It Loud book that we have on sale in bookmarks here.
And I have the unenviable task of following those two. Comrades, I may be wrong about this, but I reckon that as the clocks struck 12 to herald the dawning of a new year, the police service around the country generally, but particularly here in London, thought to themselves, 2014 is going to be a good year. One of the reasons why is because, of course, the inquest into the death of Carole's nephew, Mark Duggan, had been held over from 2014.
So they could all have a good Christmas.
So that not just that they could have a good Christmas, but also because they confidently expected that the conclusion of that inquest was going to be that Mark had been lawfully killed. And of course, in that inquest, I was there for a few days, they had a whole battery of lawyers who spent their entire time trashing the reputation and the character of Mark Douglas, characterising him as a leading figure in one of the most murderous drug-running gangs in Europe. And of course, a conclusion, therefore, that he had been lawfully killed would allow them to go back on the offensive, denouncing and discrediting not just Mark Duggan and his family, but of course also the people who participated in the riots that erupted across towns and cities in England in the aftermath of Mark Duggan's death. The plan was to reassert the claim that was made by politicians, David Cameron, Boris Johnson and the like at the time, that what we had witnessed was criminality, pure and simple and totally unjustified. And of course we also know, don't we, that immediately afterwards, Boris Johnson had hatched a plan after the inquest to go to Theresa May and say that the police needed water cannon in order to quell any future riots of that sort. Well, as Carole has explained, the police did get their lawful killing verdict, but she's also indicated this week that has been the subject of the judicial review that's going on. But as some of you who may have gone to Matt Foot's and Retta Moran's session earlier today will have heard Matt describe 2014 not as having been a good year for the police, but as having been, so far, what the Queen might call an annus horribilis, a bad year. Now, I think Matt was right to say that, but I'd go a little bit further. In the last few years, we have seen the Leveson inquiry, the appalling conclusions of the Hillsborough Independent Panel, the death of Ian Tomlinson and the sacking of PC Harwood, the ongoing inquiry by an independent panel into the murder of Daniel Morgan, the first sacking of a chief constable for gross misconduct in modern times, the investigation of more than 10 senior officers for acts of alleged corruption, allegations of recorded crime statistics, the sackings of PC's Keith Wallace, James Glanville and Gillian Weatherly after Plebgate, worrying reports by the Inspectorate about stop and search and domestic violence, the review into the conduct of the Metropolitan Police Special Demonstration Squad, the Ellison review into allegations of corruption during the investigation of the murder of Stephen Lawrence, further allegations that police sought to smear Stephen's family, and soon there will be another judge-led public inquiry into that misconduct. When you remember the list of recent revelations about police misconduct, it's not enough to mouth platitudes about a few bad apples. Comrades, you might think that those are my own words, but the reason I was looking at my iPad is because I wanted to make sure that I read the words correctly, because they're not my words. They are, in fact, the words of my brother's next-door neighbour. Some of you might be looking a little quizzical at that. My brother, who's in the audience, is looking a little bit quizzical, so perhaps I should explain. My brother has the misfortune of living literally next door to the Conservative Club in Maidenhead. And therefore, by chance, his MP happens to be none other than Theresa May, the Home Secretary. And those are her words in the speech that she gave to the Police Federation less than 2 months ago. Now, I'm sure that no one in this room is under the illusion that May said those words because she hates the police or shares the perspective that those of us in the room here tonight have expressed and will express about the police. In fact, the rest of the speech was a predictable series of platitudes about how brave the police are and how they deserve our eternal gratitudes. The title of this session is No Justice, No Peace, and there are really just a couple of very simple points that I want to make. The first is this, that the court system that we have doesn't really exist to deliver justice to poor and working class people. I walk into them every day as a practicing lawyer and see the most desperate and unfortunate people being condemned, criminalised and incarcerated. Black people who are the victims of institutional racism. Working class people who have been failed by the education system, a system that doesn't encourage and nurture their abilities. People so alienated from society that they're addicted to drugs. Single mothers who can't survive on poverty pay or meagre benefits. The whole appearance of the courts, the raised benches with hard-faced, stern-looking judges staring down at working-class people. The crests showing that these are Her Majesty's courts. The utterly ludicrous Halloween outfits that people like myself have to wear. The ridiculous language that we speak, talking about our learned friends and the like. It's all intended to intimidate working class people, to intimidate poor people, and to uphold the power and privilege and the laws that are made by the rich for the rich. What justice did Stephen Lawrence's family receive? Not only is it the case, of course, that most of his killers still walk the streets as free men, even though the police have known since days after Stephen's killing who was responsible. It's not just that those men are walking free, but we learnt earlier this year, didn't we, the disgusting revelations that at a time when that family were fighting for justice, the police were spying on that family, seeking to discredit those people who supported that campaign. What business did they have doing that? What business did the police have spying on legitimate anti-racist and environmental campaigners? What right did they have to form intimate sexual relationships with women political activists? What justice did the family of Jean-Charles de Menezes receive? What justice did the family of Sean Rigg receive? Or the family of Ian Tomlinson? Carole talked about Cherry Gross, the woman who was paralysed by the police in Brixton, and it was that triggered the riots that erupted in the 1980s. A violent assault upon that woman, sparking riots the like of which we haven't seen until Mark Duggan's death. Only this week did the family receive an apology for that. I could go on. I won't. Let me just look at in the last couple of minutes, the other half of the title, No Justice, No Peace. The reason we continue to hear about Stephen Lawrence, the reason we continue to hear about Christopher Alder, about Sean Rigg, about Mark Duggan, about the Hillsborough campaign is because these families refused to give up, refused to be silenced, refused to be cowed, and refused to be intimidated. What we have to do, in the words of the great Liverpool anthem that is symbolic of the Hillsborough campaign, is to ensure that they never walk alone. Its solidarity with those struggles is of absolutely critical importance. The parents of Stephen Lawrence openly acknowledge that in the darkest days of their campaign, there were two things that kept them going. The first was when the South African freedom fighter and later President Nelson Mandela was released from prison, came over, met the family and pledged to support their campaign. That was the first thing. The second, Neville Lawrence said, was when he spoke at the Trades Union Congress about the family's plight and received a tumultuous reception and the promise that the family would receive the unconditional support of the trade union movement, that they would underwrite the family's campaign. That didn't come out of nowhere. It came about because working class people, trade unionists, active socialists, activists and so on, understood what solidarity really means and they put it into practice. They took petitions around their workplaces, their communities, their universities and the like. They took collections up and down their streets in their communities. They passed resolutions in their union branches. The miners, who therefore were subjected to the brutality of the state during their strike in the 1980s, identified with the Lawrence family precisely because they could see that their plight, the corruption at the heart of their bitter struggle, was the same corruption that failed to deliver justice for the Lawrence family. Similarly, with the Hillsborough victims, people whose loved ones simply went to a football match but didn't come back. And the others who went to that match, who did survive, were told that they were thieves who had stolen from the pockets of people as they lay dying. I want to finish by saying this. Of course, we should have no illusions that the various panels and inquiries that have been set up will deliver justice. The struggle for those inquiries has been important, and they've only come about because people have fought for them. I've talked primarily about the police, and of course I'm more than happy to kick the police whilst they're down and demoralised. But the problem isn't just a few rotten apples in the police, and the problem isn't just the police. The police are just the vicious blue front line, the most obvious and immediate oppressors. What they're doing is a job for those who really own and control society's resources. It's the institutional racism that leads to the oppressive policing of black people, the stop and search and so on. It's the war on terror and Islamophobia that led to the kamikaze policing that led to the death of Jean-Charles de Menezes. It was the attack on students and working class people protesting against the G20 and global injustice that led to the killing of Ian Tomlinson in 2009. And of course, all those years ago, Margaret Thatcher, the ruling class warrior, deployed the police to attack the enemy within, as she characterised the miners, because she was seeking to smash working class resistance. Therefore, we know that the only way that we will achieve real justice, real freedom and real equality will be by of course, supporting and throwing everything into supporting justice campaigns like those that you've heard of about this evening, but it's also continuing to build the strength of our side, the working class, to destroy a system which is based upon oppression and exploitation, and whose laws and whose courts are designed to protect and preserve the power and privilege and the property of the ruling class. Thank you.
So can I call, first of all, Oktay? Oh, sorry. Oktay, first of all, and then Marcia. Okay.
I think there's a little bit of favoritism over there because I handed my slip not too long ago. So, guys, I don't know why that is. It's because probably my T-shirt. That could be the reason. My name is Oktay Shabazz, and I'm from the Turkish and Kurdish community. I'm from a community organization called Daima, who is very proud to be supporting the Duggan campaign and who's been with the Duggan campaign from day one. And it will be continuing to support not just the Duggan campaign, but all those campaigns against injustice, against fascism, against racism, any inequality that we face here in UK. We've been proud to be part of this campaign because we, as a Turkish and Kurdish community, we have an experience of what it is like to lose your loved ones under the police custody or under the state brutality. You know, I come from a country where we've lost hundreds, possibly thousands of our young ones by the police and by the state brutality. And it's not something that we can ever forget because, you know, we don't just lose our loved ones, but sometimes we don't even get a chance to bury their bodies, you know. And for that reason, we quite understand what the Duggan family is going through, what the Alder family is going, and what all those other families are going through. And we really feel that, you know, this is no different than what we faced in Turkey, or what we're still facing in Turkey, or what we're still facing internationally around the world. You know, I mean, just last year, if you remember, during the summer uprising in Turkey, the Gezi Park uprising, you know, we've lost 7 young people. You know, 7 young people, despite all the CCTV footage, despite all the witnesses, despite all the other statements and other evidence, you know, we haven't had one police officer being prosecuted or, you know, made responsible for the death. And I'll tell you about one, especially the last one who lost his life. His name was Berkin Elvan, and he was only 15 years old. And he was actually on his way to buy some bread from his house when he was actually, you know, shot by a tear gas banister on his head. And by, you know, after spending 256 days in coma, he lost his life, and all our Prime Minister said was, you know, he shouldn't be out buying bread. I mean, that's how disgusting and that's how humiliating it was. But it didn't stop, you know, it didn't stop those people in Turkey demanding justice for the died ones, you know. And it actually worked the other way around for the Turkish government, because we've seen the Kurdish people, we've seen the left, we've seen the LGBT communities, we've seen the people who are supporting the environment issues coming together and demanding you know, justice for those ones who've died. And we've just had last week one of those police officers now being arrested, and that was because all those communities stuck together and showed solidarity and stood for each other. You know, I mean, I personally didn't know Berkin Elvan, but I know that he was the son of a working class family. I mean, and he's like my brother, just like Mark Duggan is my brother, or Christopher is my brother, or Stephen Lawrence is my brother, or Sean Riggs is my brother. It doesn't change that, because at the end of the day, we're all coming from a working class background, and at the end of the day, we know that this is coming from the same ideology, the capitalism, who is having all these attacks, and you know, who are being controlled. I'm going to wrap it up. We will continue supporting the Duggan family. And I mean, we have a community centre in North London where we've been honoured to open our doors to the Duggan campaign and all the other campaigns. And I'll tell you something interesting. You know, and you know, since we've opened our doors to the Duggan campaign and the other campaigns, we started having more visits from the local police officer. And I think what they probably thought was, maybe we can scare these people, but they didn't realize these are Kurdish people who've seen 10 times worse, you know, back where they're from. So, you know, and something that I think Carole said at the beginning of her speech, I'm summing it up. Something that Carole said at the beginning of her speech, she said that, you know, they're trying to dismantle families or communities in Tottenham by attacking, you know, those people who are well respected. Now, who is to say that the next one to be killed by the police is not a Turkish or a Kurdish young people? So, for all those reasons, for our will to create a world which is justice, equal, and where we're all respected, and you know, we will continue to support all these campaigns, and we will continue to be, you know, showing solidarity despite all those threats which are never going to scare us. So, solidarity. Thank you.
I just wanted to touch on the prison system in Britain, and I have a friend who's committed crimes, he's done wrong, but some of the issues that he faced during his sentence were just mind-blowing. So, for example, he's a young black male from Moss Side. His circumstances and the way he's grew up led him to a life of crime. He has to take responsibility for that, I get that, but I'm quite an intelligent person, and I understand the conditions that his family were made to grow up in, and that his mum's fully addicted to drugs. His dad was a drug dealer back sort of many years ago in Moss Side, and you know, they had to be held responsible for that. I understand that, but I also understand that society have pushed a lot of these families into sort of those circumstances. Again, I will repeat, you have to take responsibility, but how is that possible when we're living in a society that doesn't allow for that to happen? So Malachi was incarcerated for a long time. He'd committed a crime with a white guy, and they were good friends. Exact same crime. They got charged with the exact same offence. The sentence Malachi received was completely different to the one that his friend received. Malachi was sentenced to 5 years. He ended up serving nearly 8. His friend got out on the 5 years. He's had contact with his friend while the friend was serving his time, all sorts, from being seen on a phone, from selling drugs in that system, but yet he still got a better outcome. Mm-hmm. I have just recently got into uni. I chose to go to Chester. Police train there. The police are training there. It threw me. They're all white. They're all white training police officers now. We're aware of the issues that have been touched on today and the outcomes and the things that people are going through. So why hasn't there been measures been put in place to try to get more minority groups into this? In Chester Uni, in my class, a class of 30, I am the only mixed race person in there. It's nice and stuff, and the teachers are great and stuff, but they took a picture of me and asked if I can be on the banner at the front of the thing. I'm not stupid. I'm not stupid, and I know why you want to use my picture. If you log on to the Chester University website, you'll see me on their thing, and I know why you've done what you've done, and I don't know how to take it. But I'm a stronger person now. I still have my moments, but I'm getting educated, so I'm very aware of what's going on around me. And it won't wash anymore. I'm 33. I'm not a kid anymore, and you're not going to blind me, or I can see what's going on. There's just, the prison system and just everything. Just wanted to touch on that, really. And you know, another thing, I'm going to go into social work, and I work for Manchester City Council, and I've analysed, and I get the feeling that the hierarchy in that service, the white people, and that's fine, that's okay, but unfortunately we're working with diverse groups of young people. You're on this top dollar, you do nothing. Those children's needs are not getting met. You've got black women coming into the service qualifying as social workers.
Sorry. Oh, right. Short time.
Yeah, anyway, I managed to grab this this black social work lady because I had a bit of a life of crime and I was questioning myself. Am I able to become a social worker because society told me that I was rubbish, and I stepped out of line and I got treated. No, I know, but that's what they tried to say. Only I spoke to this, but unfortunately I did get this black social work lady on her own, and I asked her what's it like doing social work. And she's told me that she's been in the service for 20 years. She doesn't take sick. She's a good worker. She's never been promoted. She said, you see the young, no disrespect, I'm sorry, young white ladies getting their degree. They come into the service. Within 2 years, you're at the top. You're at the top, and it makes me question, do I want to do this? But I am going to do this, and I'm going to do my bit. My bit is marketing.
Thank you. So we have Gary next, and after Gary, it's Kadisha. And if the comrade I call next, if they can just be ready and waiting, because we haven't got much longer left. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, what are the police good for? Well, absolutely nothing. They don't do anything. They don't do anything about the things that matter. They don't do anything about domestic violence. In fact, they're responsible for quite a lot of domestic violence, as it happens. They don't do anything about rape. They don't do anything about burglaries. They don't do anything about bankers that steal billions. They don't do anything about paedophiles coming out of the public schools. In fact, they don't do anything of any use to society, apart from of use to the ruling class in this country. And time again, we get more and more horrendous examples. The most recent one in Tottenham of the case people might have heard of if you're in London, Abdul Karim, who's a Down syndrome boy who wanted to get his cap that he'd left in his school. So he went back one morning to go and get it. He climbed through a window and got his cap. The police were told that someone was broken into the sixth form college, so they go and arrest him, and he's got Down syndrome, okay, people? So we're all lay people, we know what Down syndrome is, so it's fairly obvious if you've got Down syndrome, but not to the police, because they held him for at least 8 hours. They had him down on the floor with their legs in his back. They called up Interpol. They must have thought that, it was a wet dream for them because this guy's got a Muslim name and he's black. Wow, we can do something here. So they call up Interpol, see if he's a terrorist, the Down syndrome terrorist. It was an outrage. And fortunately, we have a comrade who runs a local disability centre and knew about the case and heard about the case, and we said, well, let's get together and get something done here. So we went to see the family, said, yeah, we want to do something, and we got a petition up on change.org. Don't do a lot of that petitioning stuff, but I was amazed that within a matter of days, she had 100,000 signatures on it. So when people hear these stories, actually, it is possible to win that support. But just to finish, because we've been through this time and time again, and how many people have died? What, we're up to 4,000 or something since 1969? People that have died after coming into contact with a police officer or in a police cell. Queen's Gardens police cells, I know not that well, but I did get busted for gear, for weed or something, and yeah, but I managed to get out alive. But it's but as anyone knows, going to a police cell and having that door shut on you and people with total power over you, it's a very scary thing. What can we do about it? And I always say to people, your best defence is to be organised. If you're alone, you don't have any comrades, any friends and people you can call up and get around quickly, then it's easier for the police to actually get away with picking on you. And that's what we did in Tottenham during the Broadwater Farm Defence Campaign in the years after, so Tottenham 3 and so on. They used to pick on George Silcott, used to come to Marxism every year to collect money for the campaign, and someone used to pick on him and try and arrest him every now and again, and we'd had quite a good telephone tree. They picked him up one day, and within half an hour we had 50 people outside the police station, and they had to let him go. That's the kind of organisation that we need. And actually, I was a great fan of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defence, who were my childhood heroes. Remember when Martin Luther King got killed, and I saw some black people with shotguns. I said, yes, that is the way to start looking at things. It's not down to just individual actions, it has to be mass actions. And the truth is, when there is mass action, when there are revolutions, the police run away, take their clothes off and go and hide. Yes. But I think we should try and hunt them out.
Okay, after Khadisha, it's Dean Ryan. If Dean, you can come up and just be ready to speak after Khadisha. Thank you.
Okay, without justice, there will be no peace. Kings had died at the hands of the state. But however, on the 1st of July, a couple of weeks back, the CPS decided that they're not going to prosecute anybody for Kingsley's death. However, they was faced with 10 reports, 10 people. These 10 reports were all conflicting. Obviously, there were lies within these reports. However, when they came back and told us the damning result of not prosecuting anyone for Kingsley's death, how do you expect us to feel when we know there is solid evidence out there? Kingsley writ what was happening to him on a daily basis, even the point where he was going to die. 17:15, they're going to kill me, broke the pen in half, fingerprints all over the paper. What more evidence do they need than that? What more evidence do they need than that? Literally, it's been heartbreaking for the last 3 years. Just tap me when I know I've got a minute left. Heartbreaking for the last 3 years. Seeing these families go through injustice is tearing us apart. We need solidarity. We need the support of the community in order to highlight these injustices, which is happening in our country. We are responsible for what's happening in our own country. My brother died in the hands of the state, but yet still they are saying there is no one to prosecute. Just watch this space, because at the end of the day, I am not going to give up. Like everybody else, for no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
No peace, no justice, no peace, no peace.
Okay, after Dean, we'll have Retta Moran.
Comrades, I first joined the Socialist Workers Party in 1991, and one of the first campaigns I got involved with was the Free the Tottenham Free campaign. And the reason why I did that was because actually I remember in 1985, as a young black man growing up in Hackney, the sense of pride I felt when the black community fought back. It's not a case about cheering about PC Blake not being hacked to death. It's about fighting against the police. It's about fighting stuff. And I remember the sense of pride I felt when the then Tottenham MP, Bernie Grant, got up and said that, you know, the police got a bloody good hiding, you know. Right? Because actually, when you get day in, day out, actually, sister, I used to be in a gang as well when I was a young kid. And actually, when we look at the choices that we have faced with, when we look at the lack of opportunity, it's no wonder that young people get involved in that. And I remember the harassment that we used to get. I actually work with young people now, and actually, I know, you know, and I'm saying to you, we need more people like you, not you less. So be proud and stand up and fight. All right? Now, at the time of the year, you know, at the time we got involved in the campaign, this is even 6 years on, actually the police, it was not a popular campaign to get involved. The police told lies, the media told lies. I remember seeing the front page of The Sun, a picture of Winston Silcott, made to look like a gangster. They woke him up from his police cell at 3 o'clock in the morning. They then dragged him, pulled up his arms, let his arms go, turned the bright light on, took a picture of him at the front page of The Sun to make him look like a bad man. Similarly, I heard that the police actually used a photograph of of Mark Duggan at the funeral of his daughter and made him look sullen. Is there any surprise that people look sullen at a funeral, but the police use these imagery to make it look like black men are evil and that black men's a criminal? And what I have to say about to the sister, actually, when we look at what's happening, what people talk to me about, well, look at all this black on black crime though. Look at Operation Charlie. They're doing stuff. We need to do stuff. It's true that, you know, there's, you know, the police are racist, but there's, you know, black people are killing each other. And I have to say to her, listen, we have to say this, that actually, when we look at what's happening, when we came to this country, when our forefathers came to this country, they dumped us in the slums. They dumped us in the areas which had the worst hidings. Those areas ain't slums now. Those areas are vibrant areas. We brought vitality. We brought vibrancy. And now what's happening? 60 years later, they're trying to socially cleanse us from those areas with their bloody gentrification. You know what I mean? Right? And when you have a situation in London where 50% of the 16 to 24-year-old black men are unemployed, is it any surprise that actually young people get diverted into crime? Is it any surprise that young people do that? But actually, what's quite interesting, I'm reading a book at the moment called World of Gangs, and it's important to understand that actually young people and gangs can be pulled along with social movements. And I think a really important example of this is when you look at what happened in LA. When I'm not talking about the 92 riots, I'm talking about the riots of 65, the Watts riots. Well, actually, this took took part at the height of the civil rights movement. And what happens is you get lots of young people in gangs there, maybe selling drugs, maybe living a long life. But then what happens is, as part of the Black Power movement switches them up, you find that some of those young people then become involved in the Black Panther Party, becoming fighters of social movements, and actually call themselves revolutionaries. So today, I think this is an important lesson for us, because actually we have a role to play in shaping society. When we look at gangs, we need to say to this, actually, when we see black people dying on the streets, we have to make sure that this is part of the trade union struggle. This is not something that is separate. And as we fight against, as we fight against capitalism, as we fight against austerity, we need to make sure campaigns like this are at the heart of our struggle. Because if we do that, actually we can see that we can sweep those young people along and we can pull them in our direction. So it's very, very important. And we have to say to the British state, we have to say to the capitalist class, as long as you continue to give us no justice, we will give you no peace.
We should remember as well why the police were formed in the first place. It was when the ruling class of this country decided that they could no longer rely on public hangings of the increasingly urbanised working class. That's when the police got invented. And it strikes me that perhaps the announcement of the intention to try and apply water cannon to us is the latest example of what they're trying to do when we are in number. When we are in number, they have a problem. And when we are in number and we are in solidarity in that number, not divided in that number, they have even more of a problem. So I also wanted to, just a couple of things I want to say. The water cannon is the overt side of the instruments of law that they would want to apply. But remember, it's the ruling class that have invented the laws. It's not working class people who've ever invented any of the laws that we are living under. There are covert examples of this law that are going on now that are extremely insidious. The whole prevent agenda is an extremely insidious covert example of how to criminalise people on the basis of their faith. And if you are associated with people of that faith. And they are using the infrastructure of the state to do it. So women who find themselves in the purview of social services will then also find themselves in the purview of those services if they think that in any way those women as mothers are involved in any kind of radicalisation of their children. The tentacles go in very, very deep. And the answer to it is to have a different kind of world where actually it's we who police ourselves and each other. It's we, when we took to the streets of Manchester and marched from a rally that we organised through Unite the Resistance to the main rally that was organised by the Trades Union Congress on Thursday, who didn't have any police on the streets. We stopped the traffic. Nobody got hurt. There was no problem with it. We do know how to organise ourselves. We do know how to police each other and look after ourselves. And if we lived in a different kind of world, the one that we're fighting for, that's where we'd go. The one other thing I want to talk about, you've all got this on your seats, which is the Justice for Bolton campaign. Now, that's at the Royal Courts of Justice on the 22nd of July, because we're challenging the IPCC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, over the way they have investigated the way the Metropolitan and Greater Manchester Police policed anti-fascists who called to a Unite Against Fascism demonstration in Bolton in 2010. And we have no illusions about what the limits of the IPCC or the CPS are. But I'll tell you something I remember as a second-generation Irish woman. I remember the day when I walked into the living room and saw one of the Guildford Four, Jerry Conlon, walking out the front doors of those Royal Courts of Justice, refusing to be pushed out the back, which is where they wanted him to go, right? And standing at the front, and the world media was in front of those courts, because that's what the Royal Courts of Justice exemplify. Now, there's no correlation between that and what we're doing on the 22nd, but symbolically, that's where it's at. And I would like to extend to anybody, well, everybody in London. It's difficult for us from Manchester and Bolton to get down at 9:30 on a Tuesday working day. It's a week on Tuesday, 9:30 at the Royal Court of Justice. But I also want to invite anybody from any of the campaigns to come, because we are quite good at getting media there. And I want any of the campaigns that are finding themselves having to deal with these courts, please come or send a message, and we'll make sure that we get as much media around that as we can. Thank you.
Oh, good evening all. I will first of all say I'm from the Justice for Mark campaign. I'm going to be very nervous. I'm very new at all of this because it's extremely sad that I have to even stand here because they murdered him. I'm still struggling. What I will say is thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your support. My solidarity goes out to all campaigns, all activists, all trade unions, all fighters, because it is clear that we have to stand in solidarity. There is no illusion about that, because divide and conquer is their rule, but it will not be mine and it will not be ours. So what I'm doing today is calling on you as we approach Mark Duggan's vigil on the 4th of August. I will apologise that at the moment, because I didn't quite expect to be standing like this. You know, it happens. We all know how these activist things go. So what I will say to you, there are some flyers on the chair that have the Mark Duggan website, and you can get on there and get more information about the vigil and what we will be doing on that day, because it's absolute power that we come out, because they are frightened. The paedophiles are frightened. The murderers are frightened. They're all scurrying. Oh, so-and-so has done this. So-and-so has done that. It's all out there. We need to be striking on them. Yes? And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. An afternoon. What's an afternoon to smash at them when they're killing our families, messing up our countries, messing up our state? For what? For their poxy crown and their poxy fake money. What? I'm real. We're real. We're human. I don't need their rubbish, and I'm not going to be part of it, and I will. For Mark, okay, and his mother, who I lived with, I grew up with them for a long time, okay? And I still, they say that he's a big gangster. Huh? If I really could tell you what he was about, he'd probably, shut up, be quiet. He was a gentle guy. He didn't like all the arguments. He wanted us to stop. He was more of our peacemaker. And he goes out in a vehicle, and I get a call to say he was killed. But there's a guy in Manchester, I can't think of his name, some white guy, who has a standoff for 6 hours. Mark didn't even get 2 seconds. That's it, Roll. Is it Manchester, that fella? Yes, 6 hours. But what did Mark get? Not even a second. Nothing. Hands up, gone. Black, dead. Finish. Gone. End of. Why? What crime did he commit? I don't know. Do you know? Did they tell you?
He didn't commit a crime.
Yeah, well, that's it. Even if he committed a crime, he's got a right to a fair trial. Where is that? It's not there. I'm sorry for shouting. I'm sorry for how I'm getting, but I am... When I listen to Christopher Alder's case, okay, when I listen to Kingsley Burrell's case, when I listen to Sean Riggs, I just keep going round in my head. What are we doing as a nation? What are we really doing? Look at us. We're powerful here. Let's roll out. Let's all roll out. Doesn't matter where we come from. No justice, no peace. Solidarity. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and be very, very brief. My name's Annette Mackin. I'm a journalist on Socialist Worker, and I've covered quite a few of these things. And I spoke to Winston Silcott after the latest fit-up, the Nicky Jacobs, who collapsed, and he said it was just a matter of any black man will do. And I think that just summed it up for me. I think it sums up a lot of what has been said here. It's just the absolute racism. And I think it lays completely bare the state that we're in. And I just want to say that, you know, like a lot of people, I was at the inquest, and I followed the inquest into Mark Duggan's death. And, you know, the police just sat there and they lied and lied and lied. And they were caught in a lie because a witness filmed it on their BlackBerry phone from a block of flats nearby. And even the coroner had to say that it was that it was a serious thing for the jury to consider. But, you know, it didn't turn out that way, did it? You know, it was completely... And I think that is something we have to push for in the Mark Duggan campaign. I know it is being done, but I think it's a wider thing to say what's happened to that piece of evidence. Because it is a serious, serious thing. It's about where the gun was supposed to be found, so that's a really key thing, and I think that's something that really does highlight quite a lot. And I think, you know, I've spoken to Janet before, and I think, you know, she ran for it so well. But I think, you know, it shows that the police lie and lie and lie throughout these things. And I think, you know, Marcia Rigg isn't here, but it was during their case that the police accessed the police national computer files to try and dig dirt on her family. You know, it's this sort of, you know, they go through the worst thing you can imagine. And then they're made to look like the ones that have done something wrong. And I think, you know, so what can we do? What can we do? Well, as socialists, we're here today. We've got the organisation, and I think, you know, it's quite remarkable for me is that it's not exclusive, but a lot of this is women taking on the state. You've got aunts, you've got sisters, you've got mothers, and you've got daughters, and then they get smeared. You know, that disgusting Richard Littlejohn article about Carole. So I think, you know, we need to go back into our trade unions, into our workplaces and raise this, because it's very isolating. And, you know, you're going through this grief. I can't imagine what it's like. And you go into lulls and periods of you just feel so depressed, so isolated. That's what the state tries to make you feel like. So we need to completely raise the awareness and come together as a class. Thank you.
I just want to be... I want to talk about joint enterprise. And what I mean by joint enterprise is when Andy Coulson and Rebecca Wade get away with saying, I was in the same building, I worked with each other for 10 years, we even lived in the same place, but we didn't know what we were doing, right? And if it's the other way around, you know somebody that may be involved in a crime, you're going down for 10 years because you fit the bill. And that tells me everything. The joint enterprise is about defending enterprise. It's about defending their class. But I want to end up on one other thing about why you can beat them. We are still many more of us than there are of them. And actually, the truth is, one of the problems with the police is more people believe what we say. I remember going around with George Silcott. I remember going to different places, and now, when you said the police were lying, people said, well, what were you up to? They don't say that anymore. Now people say, what have they done? Do you know what I mean? And that's important for us. It's because they've lied about our class and what's happened to people for so long. We've got a chance to actually make a difference. The cracks are showing, and the crisis is showing the cracks. And what I mean by that is, one thing I want to say is, every single time we've got a chance, I remember the 22nd of March demonstration, people said, it was a demonstration against racism, and I said, I want these people on the stage. And I think every time when we went on strike on the 10th of March, when we have AGMs, when we have any chance to use our collective power to put that story out, we have to bring these people onto the stage because they're standing out and fighting for everybody, and it's a chance for us to begin to break them down. When people say there isn't a way forward, we have to give people a choice. And I'll tell you the truth, I've done many of these campaigns. I remember going around with the M25 and going to see and the Cardiff 3, going to see them in prison, and they used to say, do you think we'll get out? And I used to say, yeah. I didn't believe it. Right? The truth is, they did get out. And they did get out because people carried on campaigning and exposing them. And I think that we have to understand that we can begin to do this, but only, I think, we've got a chance to do that as long as we connect the two things together. And the final thing to say is, I think we have to also question the whole of the system. Because one of the things that I can never forget, when the family turned out outside the police station to say somebody murdered Mark, they didn't turn out at the police station to actually do anything actually. What they said is, look, we went to report that something went wrong. And what did the police do? I couldn't believe it. They came out and attacked people. And then they said there was a riot. All right, I tell you who causes riots. The police cause riots. And even their own report says that they caused the riot. The question is, we have to make sure that the riot that the rich are doing on us now has to come up with a solution for changing our society. If we do those two things together, I think we support the families and fight for a better world. We have to do the two things in connection, and I'll stop there.
Okay, if I can ask Carole to come back to sum up for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, you know, when we're talking about the water cannons, in 2012 I was involved in meetings with people from Ireland, because in 2012 David Cameron was stockpiling rubber bullets. And in his own words, he was stockpiling rubber bullets in preparation for civil unrest in this country. Well, how does he know civil unrest is going to happen? Because they're creating it. Also, the riots that started, well, I prefer to call it uprising on our part, but yes, my family went to Tottenham police station to report Mark's murder because the police did not go to Mark's parents' home to say, we shot your son dead. They wanted that riot. Don't forget, David Cameron was cutting the police force numbers by 50,000 and they were due to police the Olympics. I believe that's the reason why they started the riots, in order to get what they want. And that's why they stood back and let Tottenham burn. That was a finger up to Cameron to tell him, look what happens if you cut the numbers. We will not be able to police the streets. So as a result of that now, what did David Cameron do? He gave them more police. He gave them more powers. And what we see is harsher policing of communities. Mark's younger brother, Marlon, regularly gets stopped by the police. They don't actually arrest him. What they do is they call him, oi. And when he turns round, they just go like this, click, click. Don't forget they shot Mark twice. No justice, no peace.
I just want to say, keep your ears open for these campaigns because they have not stopped. We are on the second leg of ours. We want to know why Christopher's body was hidden in a mortuary for 11 years and nobody was supposed to know about it. The other thing is, I want you to pencil in your diary the last Saturday in October. We really need you and each and every one of you to come to the march at 10 Downing Street against the deaths in police custody. Now, I'm giving you forewarning now. Please pencil it in your diary. The other thing is, there's T-shirts, badges that we're selling, you know, on behalf of Christopher's campaign. And please keep your eyes and ears open for the rest of these campaigns. Thank you.
Comrades, I think we've had a fantastic discussion this evening, and I really do want to pay tribute to Carole and to Janet and to every one of the campaigns that has spoken tonight, because they really are incredibly courageous and determined and dignified. I want to just say something about the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, because I think it shows us a whole number of things which are important. Firstly, it's worth remembering. I mean, there's a certain narrative about the Stephen Lawrence family campaign, a narrative in which, for example, the editor of the Daily Mail, Paul Dacre, says, and he said, after those two guys were finally convicted of Stephen's murder, that if it hadn't been for the Daily Mail, the Lawrence family would never have got justice. Now, you may recall, of course, that after the Stephen's inquest, they ran that headline calling those guys murderers and saying, sue us if we're wrong. It was, I rarely say this about the Daily Mail, it was a brilliant headline. It was an absolutely fantastic headline, but the idea that the Daily Mail was responsible for delivering the Lawrence family justice is an absolute travesty. At precisely the time that the police were sending spies in to try and discredit the Lawrence family, at precisely the time that they were refusing to catch Stephen's killers, the likes of the Daily Mail were sending reporters in to write record shocking stories about how this family was being manipulated by extremists. The Daily Mail was nowhere to be seen in those early dark days when the Lawrence family didn't know where to turn. But the Lawrence family kept going precisely because of the support that they had from working class people. And it was because they refused to give up that they got that inquiry. And as a consequence of that inquiry, we have an understanding of institutional racism in the society. I've been going to Marxism for 25 years, and for most of that time, talk of institutional racism was restricted to rooms like this or academic debating halls. The Lawrence family and that campaign and that struggle dragged that definition and placed it at the heart of our understanding of how the police and the institutions of society operate, because they refused to give up. So that shows that these kinds of campaigns are worth fighting for, that they're important and they should be supported. Sir William Macpherson, the chair of that inquiry, this was a right-wing conservative judge who had an appalling record on the question of immigration, chucking asylum seekers out of this country. But he was forced, he himself admitted, by the weight of opinion. In other words, by the number of people who turned up at the inquiry and said that the police are rotten and corrupt and racist. He was forced to draw that conclusion that there was institutional racism at the heart of the police and other institutions in society. And he finished his report by saying this, that Stephen Lawrence has given us something for which we should be enormously grateful. He has given us the chance to change. And we were promised, weren't we, by the then Home Secretary, Jack Straw, that Stephen Lawrence's death wouldn't be in vain, that it would mark, in his words, a step change in society's attitude to race relations, that there would be a struggle to eradicate it from the institutions of society. That report was 15 years ago, and yet what are the figures for Stop and Search? Absolutely going through the roof. What is the reality of the experience of black and working class kids on our streets? Dean described it very eloquently, the harassment, the bullying that they experience. What that shows, therefore, is that it's struggling and fighting for inquiries is critically important. It does make a difference, but it doesn't completely change our society. Look at Hackgate. Hackgate, you know, where the lid was ripped off the corruption at the heart of the political establishment. And they've made a scapegoat, haven't they? Andy Coulson has been sent inside, but they will regroup, they will reorganise, and they will continue to attack our side. So Rebecca Brooks gets off, and Murdoch's empire is even more profitable than it was then. What does that show us? It shows us that we have to make sure that we go further. We have to make sure that we build the strength of our side to ensure that the whole rotten edifice is ripped down and that we replace it with something that delivers real equality for everyone in our society.